have currently.
All right.
Whoever's driving should be on mute.
So just to go around the room, Elliot, do you want to tell us what your role is in your company?
Sure, I'm assistant controller at carparts.com. So I oversee the general ledger and close and inventory, things like that.
Very good. Well, welcome. I appreciate you accepting the invitation to these virtual meetings that we have. Jennifer, your role at your company? You're on mute, Jennifer.
I could speak on her behalf because we kind of do the same thing. Christy Cochran, Tina Ruiz, and Jennifer Mansour, we all work for West Tech Materials. And sorry for that weird feedback. And can you mute yourself, Christy? And we do inside sales support for a team of sales reps.
Very good. Very good. And we've got Juan Cueva on the phone as well. Juan, just a quick introduction.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Juan Cueva, Director of Technical Services for Instant Info Systems. We do reselling of different software products, and we've been working with HD Dynamics for quite a long time. So thanks for continuing to put this together.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Todd, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So today, I was going to talk about the unified interface, just given the deadline that's coming up here of December 1st. Given that I know a lot of you have already transitioned over, since we helped out with a lot of you with that transition, maybe has anybody on the call here not yet transitioned or want to know more information about that? Because if not, we can kind of skip to the other stuff.
So we haven't transitioned quite yet. I think it's going to be later in the year.
Okay. All right, then I'll just go over it briefly, and then maybe some of you other folks, and I know some of you West Tech folks are just experiencing it as of today. So we just launched yesterday, so.
So Todd, this is Jennifer. We are on the wave 2. That was
yes,
on wave 1?
I'll show you.
Okay.
The early access features are enabled in your environment. Yeah.
Okay.
Just the early access, so it's only like a very small subset of the full release. I'll go over that after the unified interface piece, but I'll just touch on the unified interface, and then maybe Juan or some of you other folks can kind of chime in with your experience.
Great.
Over. All right, so unified interface, they are forcing a transition by December 1st of this year. They have pushed that back. It was October. Now got pushed back to December 1st, but that one seems to be a hard, fast date now. You can manage your own transition dates. If you haven't done this yet, you should access this portal. Where you can each individual environment, you can set the date up to December 1st, I think, or maybe the day before, but you can push it as far back as December 1st, and they'll force the transition. Basically, what that does is there is currently in your environment a switch that turns on and off the unified interface only to force everybody into that interface. And all that really happens on that date is they disable it. Oops, let me go back. I accidentally clicked on that. So they just disable that button. Like it's grayed out like this because it's already been transitioned. If you guys are not familiar with where that is, I can show you here. So this is on the admin.powerplatform.microsoft.com is the new Power Platform Admin Center, newish. It's been around for a while, but some people are slowly getting familiar with it. They are now forcing, they used to have an older one. As of maybe 2 or 3 months ago, they started forcing, if you try to go to that older URL, it actually pushes you into this one. So now you have your environments list here, and you can manage each individual environment. This is just a demo environment, so I only have the one, but usually you're going to have a sandbox environment as well. So you can click on the individual environment. That'll open up some of the details in there. It'll give you just some basic information about what the URL is and all that good stuff. If you go into the settings, and under product and behavior, that's where the unified interface option is. And as you can see, this one has already been transitioned, so the option is off. If you haven't transitioned yet, you can turn that on and off at will. And usually what we'll recommend is you flip that switch for like a sandbox environment first and go in and check it out and kind of see if any errors show up and so forth. Typically, what you're going to see is, you know, if there are errors showing up, a lot of times it's due to custom JavaScript. So depending on your level of, you know, customizations that have been done for your organization, you're going to see more or less errors, you know, and how old it is. Some people that have had that customization done recently and by, you know, experienced developers are going to find that there's very few errors because they're using, you know, modern scripts and, you know, they're not using any of the deprecated or unsupported code that, you know, a lot of these legacy, you know, if you've been around since, you know, the CRM 4.0, you know, and kind of upgraded over time kind of thing, a lot of that legacy code has just kind of come along with it. And now with this transition, they're truly saying like a lot of this deprecated code is no longer, it just doesn't work. So that's what you're going to see. Another thing that you'll notice is the tabbed layout. So that's another kind of change, fairly large change as far as like how the different tabs get laid out. So before, when you just had like a big long screen, some of it made sense. You know, you just scroll down and there it was. Now that it's all tabbed, maybe you have to move some things around. And usually those things are pretty, you know, it's just cosmetic changes, but it's, you know, it can really help the user experience if you streamline those you know, those forms for the tab layout. Another item, and if you guys have any questions along the way, just feel free to chime in. Another item that shows up a lot with this unified interface transition is the custom buttons. If you had any buttons at the top that are, you know, customized for your organization, a lot of those will vanish, or, you know, they won't even be available on the unified interface if they're not designed for that. So they've added some, you know, different flags and so forth to allow it to show up in the unified interface. And, you know, even the icon and some of those kind of things are different than how they were in the old interface. So it just takes a little bit of configuration. You can get those buttons to show back up. Additionally, if you know, one of the other things that happens is, you know, there's a whole lot of new features that were custom designed just for the unified interface, because this thing's been around for going on almost 3 years now. And they've finally, you know, said, okay, everybody's got to flip it. But there's been a lot of features in those 3 years that have been designed strictly for the unified interface, are not even available in the old interface. So a lot of those you're going to want to be able to take advantage of. If you just switch over and you don't, you know, add some of these things to the forms or utilize any of these things, you're kind of missing out on some of the features and so forth. So that's where, you know, some experience or even, you know, time doing research and so forth of what the features are really comes into play. So Timeline specifically has a lot of features, which I'll go over here in a little bit, as far as there's even some new features that they're rolling out as part of this new release. And then there's new form controls. So some of the switches, and there's cool ways to interface with some of these different types of fields, like text fields and number fields and all these different things. Like you can have little radial buttons and dials and, you know, flips and, you know, little toggle switches and all kinds of things, slider bars, which just makes the user experience a little bit better. So specifically for people, you know, a lot of sales people and so forth that are, you know, really find that useful. You know, if they're doing a lot of numbers, instead of having to like type in everything, you know, to be able to use these little sliders and things like that. And you can control, like, you know, how, you know, the increments that it goes in. If you want to go in tens or hundreds or thousands, you know, you can do that to make it a lot easier. So a lot of people like those kind of things. Additionally, there's so all these things are called controls that you can add. So there's a whole bunch of different controls that are available now, as far as on the form, like I said before, for different field types, and then additionally new view controls. So there's a calendar view, there's a Kanban view, and there's actually a few other types of views, and I can show you that here in a moment as well. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but I just tried to highlight a few of them. There's a send to PDF button, a new product picker, which I'll show you. So all of these features either have, you know, toggle switches to turn them on and off. Or you have to add a specific control to the form to make them work, things like that. So if you're just flipping the switch, you're kind of missing out on a lot of these features. So it's just something to take into consideration, and, you know, we can certainly help with, you know, advising on some of these types of things and what's going to work best for your organization. Any questions on that?
Yeah. So these the new features, that has to be turned on by the admin, or is that a part of the rollout that we just did?
They'll be turned on by the admin, yeah. So an admin has to go in there. In your case specifically, some of those I have turned on. In other cases, you know, like some of these things are, you know, like the send a PDF button, for example, relies on what are known as Word templates in the reports. So if your reports and, you know, even your proposal, you know, reports and some of those kind of things, if they're not written in using the Word templates, if they're using like SSRS reports or something like that, then that's not going to work for it. So there's certain things that you can't take advantage until you know, you do other things. And same with product picker, which I'll show you here in a moment. If you're not using the products and so forth to build your quotes, then it's not really going to add any value to you.
Okay.
Any other questions about the unified interface transition? All right. Moving on to Wave 2 2020. For those that aren't aware, Microsoft has come out with a very regular release schedule. So in April they come out with Wave 1, and then in October they come out with Wave 2 every year. So they say those dates, and for the most part, most of the features are available, but they kind of give themselves a window, and that's why they call it a wave instead of, you know, just a big bang. It's a slow rolling wave, but most of it starts in, you know, April or October, and then continues to get released up until the next wave. And for the most part, they've done a really good job of getting those things out within like a month or two of that initial release. Some of them have lagged all the way up until, you know, right up until the next wave release, but nonetheless, the features are coming out fast and furious. There's no shortage of new features and kind of time and effort that they are putting into these products, these Dynamics products. So it's been really nice to see, you know, just the amount of effort that they're putting into these to continually improving, as well as, utilizing the feedback from, you know, partners like ourselves and customers like you guys, that if you go into, I can't remember the URL off the top of my head, but they have all these feedback, you know, ideas that you can post or vote on, you know, for future releases. So that's where they're getting a lot of the ideas from here, is like people that have posted these things and said, we need this feature, where is it? And then if people vote it up, the more votes it gets, the more attention that it gets, and the more likely that it'll be made available in the next wave release. So definitely encourage you to look at those and vote things up that you feel are missing or lacking. And they've been really, really good. And they'll even show at the bottom, and I'll show you, you know, this is where the idea came from, and they'll link these features back to the ideas that got voted up. So you can see, you know, exactly you know, how many people were looking at this and kind of what it took and how long it took to kind of get to an actual release. But nonetheless, they're listening and, you know, really incorporating a lot of those ideas into their wave releases. So I'm going to go, here's the early access features. So what they do is here's the full list. So I'm not going to bore you to death with all of these, but this is the list of the early access features. So they have features that are available, that are going to be available, general availability in October of 2020. For the most part, all of these are. And then they have ones that are early access. So usually they'll give you that date. This year it was August 1st to make some of these available. So you can go in and enable these early access features. Usually, depending on what they are and, you know, how big and drastic they are, you'll want to test it out in your sandbox first. And, you know, if you really want to, you can enable it in production. But certainly in your sandbox, you know, there's no harm in enabling it there, and you can really start to see how a lot of these come along. And they'll automatically still update you with the other stuff, even if you enable the early access features. So if there are enhancements or updates or bug fixes and so forth, those will get rolled out too for you. So
just a question, Todd, for Elliot. Elliot, are you more on the finance side than the D365 side? And if so, are you using Business Central or AX, or what version are you currently using?
Yes, I'm in finance and accounting, and we're using Great Plains, a very old Great Plains model.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly which version of it, but we're upgrading to D365. So that's
so
much I know.
Most likely Business Central here, which you can see that Todd's got up here, all the early releases for the different things that you need. If you want to contact us later to try and get a trial version or anything like that set up, or further discussions on that, let me know.
Okay, thanks.
To help with that.
Yeah, in particular, you know, this is finance. I don't know if you were moving towards F&O or Business Central, but either way, they've got a lot of features that they're adding to all their product line across the board. You can see all of these, you know, they're changing all the time about, you know, what's what, but nonetheless, for the most part, it's, you know, sales and service are kind of the D365 portion of it, D365 CRM portion of it, marketing, finance and operations, HR, commerce. They've got a whole slew, and they keep adding more and more. And all of them apply, you know, under this umbrella as far as, you know, the Wave 2 update and the early release. Today, just for time, since we only have an hour, we're going to really focus on the sales and service portion of it. There's only a few updates that are actually available in there to really look at, but I thought some of these would just be cool to kind of show. So with that, and really quick, I'll show you back to the Power Platform here. If you go back to the environment, the way you enable these, actually it's not in here now, but because I've already enabled them in here, It looks like one of them failed, but this is just the demo environment, so it's not a big deal. If you go into a regular environment that doesn't have it enabled yet, next to this updates, there'll be a little button here to enable the early release, and then you can turn that on, and then it'll install all the updates for you, and then you're good to go. So with that, I'll show you some of the updates in there. So this is, again, just a demo environment, but one of the things you'll notice probably right out of the gate is this little navigation at the top has changed a little bit. Subtle, but actually quite nice, I think, personally. They've done away with a little down arrow. I think they're kind of removing that altogether to access all the apps instead. And they're no longer showing kind of the trail of where you're at. So now they're just accessing it through, if you just click on it, that gives you your apps list. So I find that much easier than going through and hitting the down and then my apps, and that took you to like a whole different page. So much more streamlined and intuitive as far as how to access things. So within any given app, you can see the app list just by clicking on that. So you'll know which app you're in, and then if you want to switch to one, it's as simple as clicking on that and just flipping over to whichever app you want. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to show you, I'll just go through Sales and Service Hub. Another item that you might see right out of the gate is this little back arrow. Again, something subtle, but much needed as far as navigation and, intuitive navigation. You can use the back browser, but sometimes that gets you into like, weird places. So you can, just by clicking on that back button, it'll bring you back to the last screen you were at within D365 without, completely refreshing the whole screen and doing all this different stuff. So it's nice because you can just go back and it just goes back to exactly where you were on the last screen and then keeps all the other navigation the same. So that part is really nice. They've also made this list a little bit more readily available. It was kind of hidden in like a little down caret arrow. So it wasn't very obvious what it is, but this actually shows recent your list, basically, like this list, but in a slightly different format, but easily accessible from within a given record. So you can hit back if you were in a list, but if you were in, going record to record or what have you, you can hit this and it'll show you a quick list of, the last view that you were using. So in this case, it's my active accounts. And then you can just flip and it actually flips it right over here and keeps this open. So you can just navigate, across different records very simply and easily without having to go, back to the list, and then, go back to here and then this and then go in and then get back, go through all that. So that part, again, some of these subtle changes, but very, very nice. Any questions so far? Okay. Another, they are enhancing this timeline feature quite a bit. So I don't have any emails. I don't think. Let me see if we can find something with emails. They have been working on that quite a bit. I don't know if there's any emails in here, so we'll see if we can find a record with some emails. In that timeline specifically, they can show items in a conversation view, like very similar to Outlook. Additionally, you'll notice that this thing is available here. This is to expand and collapse all the records. So if some people like it there, where you can see it expanded. So all the information is expanded automatically. And so that way you don't have to go in and click each individual one by one to see stuff. You can expand all. They've also
That's really
added,
nice.
Yeah, they've also added this to always show email as conversations, and this is individually. So if you flip it, That only shows it that way for you. So if somebody else doesn't like it, they can keep it as individual messages. But the email specifically, if you click on that, it'll show it as like a conversation view. In this case, they don't. It doesn't look like we have any conversations, but what it does is it groups them together, similar to your Outlook. If you like that in conversation view, so you can see all the ones linked together, you can see like the email chain. It'll show like a little line between them, and they'll group them all together, so that you can see, you know, which emails are related to each other, and it bubbles them all together. Which personally I like. That's how I prefer to view it, because that's how I view it in Outlook. And now I can do it in the timeline as well. Another portion that I noticed, they have actually come out with some recommendations. So when you're actually designing these things, some people have complained, and Juan, I know specifically you're one of them, as far as the time to load these timelines. They have been working on that specific issue. And actually, when you're designing them now, it gives you a warning if you show more than 10 items in there. Even if you remove, so what I mean by items is what things are being displayed in the timeline, and even things that you can add. So if you remove some of these, there's some of these things that you may not even know what they are or care about. So there's like alert subscription, booking alerts, invite redemptions, portal comments. So depending on what you have in there, you have, you know, all these different things. And so even if you don't have records in there, you know, what it's doing every time it's loading is it's going through and trying to, you know, query each and every one of these different tables in the back end. So when you're actually loading that screen and loading that timeline, even if you don't have records in there, it's going to take longer if you don't disable some of those. So one of the things we recommend is just really funneling this down to the things you care about and removing all the stuff you don't, and that'll make the timeline much zippier, and you'll just be able to see the things you really care about.
Todd, did they add any features for options with sorting automatically by creation date, for example? Like what I noticed before is if you limited what you're displaying, sometimes with the notes, you would not have the sorting options in the configuration.
I don't know that that's changed, but they do have a number of options for sorting. I think by default it's set to sort by last updated date.
Right.
So, but you can change that in the configuration portion of this.
Okay. I'm updating my dev now, so I'll take.
Yeah, and they've actually added, like, this was very recent, within the last month, I would say, in the Power Apps designer. They're pushing everybody to that. There's still a number of features, and I won't go too deep into this one. This is a topic for a whole nother webinar, but in the designer, it does actually allow you to adjust the timeline settings now. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And there's actually like a couple new ones in there that aren't available. So as they're adding some of these features, they're only adding it to the Power Apps designer. They're not adding it to the classic designer. So it's getting interesting, but eventually they'll just cut that one off too on the classic one and have everything available in the Power Apps designer. But that one's getting more and more powerful. I think every day I see new features in there. So that would be where I would recommend to go to configure this timeline now, is in the Power Apps designer, not in the classic one.
Okay.
Let's see. I mentioned the PDF. So that's another one that they've really worked on and added even more enhancements here in this latest release. So let me see if I can find a quote. No active quotes. All right. We have one. Perfect. So obviously I don't have any products in here, but there is this export to PDF. That is, you can configure that within the app itself. If you go to the app settings, within here, there's an option for convert to PDF here under productivity tools. And if you go to manage that, this will show you. So if you flag any of these, it'll automatically. So now they used to only have this to very specific entities, like 4 or 5 of them, I think. Now they've opened it up to all entities, including custom entities, where you can turn that on. So just by a check of a box and hit save, that little export to PDF button will show up. Now, the caveat to that, as I mentioned before, is you have to have some sort of Word template to be able to utilize this feature. So if I just show that, right now it's only enabled in quotes, so that's why you saw that. When you use that, if there are Word templates available, when you hit export to PDF, it's pretty cool. It shows a little preview of the template itself, and also allows you to save directly to Dynamics, so it'll just save it in here. You can email it out, so it'll open up an email with this PDF attached, or you can just download it directly to your computer and do whatever you want with it. And they also have some, kind of highlighting and different kind of tools available, but any of the templates are available, and it'll show you a quick preview based on the, record that you're on. So this is something that, all of our, anybody that we're, writing new proposals or quotes or any of these kind of forms for, we're utilizing the Word templates and no longer really recommending using SSRS. They're trying to get rid of that, and they'll eventually completely cut it off. So, so moving forward, any new kind of reports or quotes or any of those kind of things that you're writing, I'd really recommend utilizing the Word template. And it's actually fairly simple to design those yourself.
Is that also when you're doing mailings or emails? Is that using a Word template when we did the mailings, when you worked with me on that? Because it has you create a template first.
I think so, yeah. So you don't have to use this for the PDF, but any of the Word templates are here if you go to Word templates, and then you'll see them in there. So that's kind of how you know if you're using the Word templates or not.
Oh, okay.
So all it's doing is just showing you the same reports in here, but being able to export it directly to PDF for you, which is really nice. And like I said, they've opened it up now with this new release to all custom entities, not just very specific ones that they had before. So it works quite well. Let's see. They are, but not yet. They said they're going to have it in here, but it is not yet available. But one thing we do see, and a lot of this comes from the service app and stuff like that, if you're using cases and really want to communicate quickly with customers and so forth. But they are adding a feature where you can reply directly from the timeline with an email. Additionally, they've added a feature in here. You have to enable it, but it opens up when you create a new email. It opens up in this little compose window instead of completely taking over the screen that you're on. It opens up in like a little compose window here, and you can quickly compose an email and type it out. If you haven't used this in a while, the editor has gotten way better with the rich text formatting and all this different stuff that you can do, like very standard email stuff. Additionally, you can have signatures that automatically populate in there for you and things like that. So this editor's come a long, long ways, and you can really, use this to, communicate and so forth within, Outlook or within D365 without having to like kind of flip back and forth between Outlook. Now, for incoming emails and things like that, you may still want to use Outlook and use the app, the D365 app within Outlook to, track those emails and stuff like that. But any outgoing emails, I really strongly recommend trying to use this and getting used to using this a little bit more. If you start setting your signatures and doing some of that, it becomes a lot more useful, and easy. It's starts to become a very similar experience to Outlook. And the additional benefits that you get out of this are, one, it tracks it automatically, so you don't have to go through that extra step of clicking the app and hitting track and set regarding and all that kind of stuff. You can just do it straight in here, and it'll automatically set regarding based on the record that you're in and all that. Additionally, and then this is also another option that you have to turn on and make sure that it's available in the administration settings, is it'll do some tracking for you. So it'll track if they've opened the email, some of those kind of things that you get with, a lot of like marketing add-ons and stuff like that are now, kind of creeping into some of the standard D365 sales and service. You can get that as part of it. So it'll give you, a lot of that tracking information for, was it delivered? Did they open it? And some of those kind of things, if you ever really want to see that kind of information.
And does that feature only if we emailed through the actual account itself or through the timeline? So if I did like a mass email with like a mail merge or something, I wouldn't see it there, correct?
Good question. I mean, if you're doing the mail, if you're doing the mass mail from D365, that one I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. If it has to be from here, or if you can do it, if you just generate in bulk, if you'll still get that tracking information, I'm not 100% sure of that. I can look into that though.
Okay, yeah, if you could. And then also, is this feature already turned on now where if we went into the timeline and responded to an email, or is that something you mentioned the admin has to turn on?
Good question. I'd have to check too. I think it is on, but it's really just a flip of a switch here. It's under, enhanced email on there. And then there's also an email option too. So the enhanced email gives you the tracking and all that kind of stuff in it.
Okay.
So I think that is on for you guys, but I'd have to check.
Okay.
Any questions on any of these so far?
And last question.
Go ahead.
Is it pretty self-explanatory if we went in and tried emailing, or is there like some kind of like an article or training that we could read if anybody else wanted additional information on this feature?
There should be. Oh, and there is the submit an idea option. By the way, if you go to the help and support, there's that submit idea. If you have an idea or feel like it's missing something, you can submit them there.
Okay.
You can also look at this in that help and support for the help center. There should be plenty of information about sending email. Yeah.
Is that only from the admin platform, or is that from anybody? I can't tell what platform you're in.
Oh yeah, that's anybody, but it's just easy to.
Okay.
Anyone should have this.
Okay.
You should have this on your app, the help and support option. If not, it's really just docs.microsoft.com for Dynamics, and then so it's readily available to anyone. But this kind of walks through the whole enhanced email experience that gives you like some of the feedback and so forth on it.
Todd, for the signature, is it possible to create like a global signature, or does each individual have to create their signature?
You can create them as an admin. You can create them for other people, but you have to just make them the owner. But it's under this personalization settings, and each individual, just like Outlook, you just have to have. It's pretty easy to send them instructions on. You just go here and hit new, and then create a signature. And then the only additional step you have to do is when you create that signature is set it as default. Otherwise, it won't automatically populate in there when you create an email. You can do it with that insert signature button. But much like Outlook, where you have like one default signature, you can have multiple types of signatures, and then you can choose one, or you can set one as default and it'll automatically populate that each time.
Got it.
And that anybody can set their signature or the admin?
Anyone can set their own signature. Yep. It's just, you just have to go in here. You should see personalization settings. And then you'll have the option for email signatures here. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes. So yeah, then you can just set your little signature in there with whatever you want. And then after you save it, you just hit the set as default.
Okay.
Yeah. It's in here. And then from that point forward, anytime you go and let's say you're emailing somebody, then if I send an email at that point, then it just automatically plops that signature in for you.
Perfect.
Yep.
And so when we send through Dynamics, we see the tracking in the history through Dynamics, but it doesn't link to Outlook where we would see it also sent through Outlook, correct?
Let me think. You should see it in your sent emails.
Okay.
Yeah. And if somebody replies to it, it's going to come through your Outlook as well.
Okay.
And it'll automatically be tracked at that point.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll see it in
as
your
long as you change the subject line of the email, right?
Right. And you'll see this
Okay.
little like white box over here. When you actually send out an email, you'll see the information populate in here over on this side after you've sent it. So, but you have to go back into, the timeline and look at the email and open it up. And then you can see the tracking information.
Okay. Thank you.
There are some additional features that they are adding. But I think that as far as like the ones that are available for early release right now, that's probably most of them. There's some other customer service ones that are available. And then, like I said, the one that I'm looking forward to is it within the timeline. When you have an email activity, I was in one not too long ago. Let's go there. So if you see an email in the timeline right now, there's some of these which are okay. It's like a sign, but there's some fairly irrelevant ones in here. Like add to queue, but there's supposedly adding a reply, email and stuff like that directly in here, so you don't have to just open email. So right now, the way you have to do it is like open email and then reply, which isn't horrible, but if you're doing this all day long, it's just nice, similar to, when you have a preview in Outlook, that you can just hit reply straight from here without having to open up the entire record. And I think forward and stuff like that, they're going to add some of those icons in here as well. So it'll make it nice and easy to kind of utilize this for communications with, customers, clients, etc. And, that's really what we're driving for is, keeping all that kind of information in a centralized place, right? And making it nice and easy and simple to do. All right. We have about 10 minutes left. I know there's a boatload of other features within the upcoming release. And we can send this out after as well, but these are the full list of features in here. And another topic for another time will be the Power Platform, because that's got a whole set of, that's more like administrators type stuff, but it's got a whole set of really cool features that are rolling out here in October as well. But we just wanted to quickly highlight some of the October release things that aren't particularly, available in this early access one. One of them is forecasting for sales. So they're really putting a lot of time and effort into building out the forecasting model in here to make it like a true enterprise grade forecasting, system, instead of just, you can build like a little pipeline for opportunities. No, this has like full forecasting kind of features, and they're really beefing it up to, automate some of these things and, give people really robust, even like a new dashboard for forecasting. They're going to have a pre-canned one.
Yeah. Todd, just to add to that, they're also expanding forecasting to products and even by quantity. So that's all going to be supported as well, and also on a global scale in multi-currency. So they're really taking it to another level of forecasting, so that companies can really track their products and those sort of things, not just on the sales side itself.
Yeah. The virtual bots. Jody, do you want to talk a little bit more about that, or?
Yeah, so on customer service, when you go into cases moving forward, there is going to be like what they call an omni-channel, which is virtual bots. And what it does, it enables people to go through the chat component on it. So people can come in through Let's Chat. It'll pop up automatically. What the virtual bots do is go through a sequence of things to figure out what the customer wants, asking questions, etc. Once they get to the point where it has to go to a customer service rep, that chat will come up on their cases activities form, and they can start communicating with the client. As they're on the phone with the client through the chat, they can also include other people. So if they need escalations from management or they need approvals as they're going through the chat, you can include other people on those virtual chats as well. So really intuitive to kind of have virtual bots, so nobody gets missed out on if people are approaching your portal or going into customer service and going through the chat module. This is all going to be enabled. I've demoed it to a client, and it's really very powerful and very visual for the client, and it works well with also knowledge content. So if you're putting any kind of literature or guidance for customers that they need to go to, the virtual bot can handle that themselves without dealing with an individual. So, and it tags everything into cases and communications and through the portal in combination as well, just with cases, to let you know how that works.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's very
really
nice.
Useful if you have a lot of high volume on your service side. Field services is they put a lot of new features in as part of this release. So this was just a really small portion of that, but really the mobile app should be fully functional for the Microsoft version. Previously, if anyone's familiar with field services, you had to use really an app provided by Resco, which is fine, but it also required a separate licensing fee and so forth. Now they've kind of taken a lot of that IP and then kind of made it their own, and included it and they had an initial release at the April release, but it was very minimal. Not really able to recommend that one at the moment, but now with this release, it's supposed to be pretty much fully functional, and again, comes as part of your license for field services. So really making enabling the field services to work remotely, from a mobile app or tablet or what have you, much easier. And also a lot of industry accelerators. And if you're not familiar with accelerators, they have kind of pre-canned, configurations of D365, and not just small things. Like these are really large installations for, that have very specific industry focuses. So if you're a nonprofit, if you're in media and communications, and they're expanding this all the time. So they work with other partners and other, groups that have done this over and over and over again to really hone in on the specific things that these industries need. And then they come out with a free of charge accelerator solution that you can install in your environment, and it comes with all kinds of great stuff. And it's open source, so you can configure it. Use the code, take what you want, throw the rest out, whatever. So it's all readily available. All the code's available on GitHub, and so they're really great. So if you're in any of these industries, highly recommend looking into some of these to see if there's some of these things that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, and they're expanding on that constantly as well. To Todd's conversation there. When you, for instance, if you're doing financial services now, in the new release in October, they've included a mortgage component for financial services. So these are kind of pre-built solutions that you can just expand and configure and manipulate that way. So just know that Microsoft put a lot of focus and attention on how certain verticals actually work to make these available, and the nomenclature is very, very in tune with the industry specific requirements as well. Any questions on that at all?
Also, anybody have any topics they would like us to address in upcoming weeks for our next groups? If there's anything that you guys can suggest, we'll make a list of those as well.
So just as a matter of what we've done here today, every 2 weeks we're going to come up with a certain set of subjects. Obviously, this release topics are always going to be part of this quotient. We can delve more into specifics as people need them. So your input's very valuable for what you want to get out of this and what you'd like for us to cover in these sessions. At the same time, we will be, doing like Power App sessions and a whole bunch of other things as well. So any feedback you can give to us, that would be great. A survey questionnaire will be coming out to you in an email after this presentation. If you guys can give us some good feedback, that would be terrific. And again, we're available. If you guys have any follow-up questions or want to discuss these things further, feel free to email us or call us. Any questions from anybody? Okay.
All right, well, if there's no questions, then we'll let everybody get on with their day, but thank you for your time. And yeah, like Jody said, if there's any other topics or anything you can think of that you think would be great for us to cover, we're happy to incorporate those in some of our future user group sessions.
Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you, Julie.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate your time.